Welcome to Primary 2 Meet the Teacher. Our P2 team this year is Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Cottis and Mrs. Forsyth. Here is a picture of Primary 2F's classroom and a couple of things that we have on our wall so far with our class charter and our class friendship tree and chalk pastels. Here is a picture of Primary 2K classroom with their chalk pastels and friendship tree as well. Just to give you an idea of a typical day in Primary 2. So when the boys and girls first come in, they will wash their hands and they will self-register to say they're here with a lollipop stick with their name on it. They will then be involved in a variety of maths or literacy activities till playtime, where they then will wash their hands and they will have the snack and the story and be involved in either, again, maths or literacy activities. We will then go out for a playtime first, and then they'll come back in and wash their hands and they will have lunch in the classroom. Then after lunch, they have a calm time to get themselves ready for their afternoon learning, where they will either do topic, PE or another area of the curriculum until home time, where we wash our hands again. And obviously you've noticed we have a constant hand washing in the classroom. So looking at what literacy we're going to cover this year, we will be continuing with sounds and spelling, revisiting the sounds they will learn in Primary 1 and developing more awareness of new patterns. Concentrating first of all on double consonant blends like sh and ch and th and w, and moving on to vowel digraphs like a, e, u. Alongside reading and writing words using our sounds, we'll also learn to read and write words called tricky words that they can't sound out, they've just got to learn by sight. This is usually done as an introduction to the sound as a whole class. And then they'll be put into groups where they move around doing active games, practicing the sounds, and then at the end of the week they'll do a dictation where we will say the word with the sound in it and a sentence, and they try and write it. And that will show whether they've retained the sound and are able to use the sound to read and write words by the end of the week. We also, throughout the week, will be doing reading. Reading mainly for enjoyment, checking that the children, first of all, can follow the words, can use their sounds and their tricky word knowledge to read the words, building it up to eventually being able to become more fluent and expressive when reading. Through this, we'll use Oxford Reading Tree books, which are the Biff and Chip stories, and we'll also using Big Cats, which can, a lot of them focus on the phonics, their sound knowledge. So here's an example of how we would teach a sound. We would be all together and be introduced to the new sound. So this new sound is A, and an and I say A. And together we would discuss words that have A in it. We would write them up in the smartboard together, and we would see if we could read words with that sound in it. Then they would go into little groups, and we would maybe do some word building with magnetic letters, where they would get pictures and they've got to put the sounds down, crash them together to read words with A in it. They then would get a whiteboard pen and see if they can write the words themselves. And then after that, they would follow up with some spelling activity to build upon the sound knowledge. These activities could consist of a word bingo game, where they've got the pictures and they've got to match the pictures to the word. It might be a word search, where they've got to find the word with that sound in the word search. It might be hangman, where they've got to try and think of letters to make the word. Or it might be an anagram where the letters are all mixed up and they've got to try and make the words. And each one would be reinforcing that sound that we'd be learning for the week. The children will be exploring a lot of different ways of writing over the year. Starting off with more personal knowledge of themselves and writing about themselves, and then moving on to topic-related writing. To begin with, we're really focusing on making sure the children are leaving finger spaces between their words. And we'll be doing sentence building, encouraging them to put a capital letter at the beginning and a full stop at the end. Once they become more comfortable of writing in this way, we'll then be introducing them to connectives to show how to join the sentences correctly with an and or a but. We'll be talking about how to make their writing more exciting by using wow words, so they're using interesting vocabulary. And we'll also be introducing them to openers so that their sentence doesn't start the same way. So you can use a variety of sentences, so it doesn't just start, I did this, I did that. And running the whole way through our literacy programme, we're continuing to try to learn to form our letters correctly. We'll be revisiting the letters that we learnt in Primary 1 to consolidate the correct formation, and then once they are solid with that, we'll be introducing the capital letters and how to form them correctly. An important part of writing is to develop their finer motor skills. So we'll have different finger exercises for the children to practice to make their muscles stronger in their fingers. And they use something called dojim, which is strengthen the fingers, which will have a positive impact on when they're writing. Other activities that will encourage this is by cutting with scissors, using tweezers, squeezing pegs, and these are all important to encourage fine motor skills.
So moving on to numeracy, we will be continuing with our SEAL programme, which the children started in Primary 1. SEAL stands for Stages of Early Arithmetical Learning. And also we will be continuing with Numicon, again, which the children were exposed to in Primary 1. Numicon helps the children understand the connections between numbers. It is a multi-sensory way of learning, which means that the children learn by seeing and feeling. Later on in the year, we will be starting the Big Maths programme. Again, that's a programme of maths which the children will follow right up till they finish primary school. So it goes right up to the end of Primary 7. So going back to our Primary 2 classes, we believe that obviously we have to start any kind of introduction to number work using concrete materials, and then later on we would move on to pictorial representations, and then of course finally abstract understanding. So just to clarify that would mean, for example, if we were doing a simple addition sum and we were learning to add, let's say for example 2 plus 3, the children first of all would start counting with little objects or cubes that they can physically manipulate. They can move them around and they can hold them. Fingers too are great for this. We use a lot of finger counting in class, and that's absolutely okay to do. Once the children have grasped that idea, we would then use pictures which they can count. And finally, after that, hopefully the children will be able to calculate the sum mentally without any support. So what does a typical numeracy lesson look like in Primary 2? Usually the lesson starts with a whole class input where we practice actually counting. So we'll count forwards and backwards, and then we might count in 2s and 10s or 20s or 100s and things like that, just so that we gain a lot more confidence in counting. After that, the children will be in different number groups and they will move around the classroom, and they'll be involved in different what we call rotations. So they will have a practical teaching session with the teacher, and then they will have a follow-up activity which could be a practical challenge, or maybe a follow-up written challenge, and then there will be a set of activities at different tables which the children have to participate in. These activity tables can consist of number games and card games, tasks to do with Numicon, and of course very importantly our number formation practice. So what exactly will we be learning in our numeracy lessons? The main focus will be on numbers to 30, and then after that working with numbers within 100. Like I've just mentioned, we will be doing a lot of counting forwards and backwards. We will be recognising and identifying numbers, And we'll be looking at number patterns, counting again in ones and twos and tens and fives, and looking at them as written patterns too. Simple place value is extremely important, so we do a lot of work on that, and we'll be looking there at combining numbers, partitioning two-digit numbers into tens and ones, or tens and units perhaps. When it comes to actually calculating, we'll be looking at addition and subtraction, and finding or looking at and exploring strategies to solve these calculations. And finally, we will be looking at grouping and sharing, which is really an introduction to multiplication and division. So it's trying to understand what the concept is before we actually go on to multiplying and dividing. So, what do we actually do when we teach? What materials do we use? We have a variety of materials, but we thought perhaps the easiest way to explain things to you was to give you an example. So this week we've been learning a lot about number 8. So here is an example of how we would teach the children the number facts for 8. So in the picture you can see a variety of practical materials that we start off with first of all, so that children can play about with the concrete materials in order to understand the main idea. So in the picture you can see that the children have used cubes, they've used pieces of Numicon, they've used some die, they've used domino patterns, they've used coins, and they've used coloured counters to show different ways of making 8. So we have used concrete materials to make the story of 8, and now here in the picture you can see how we have moved on to pictures. So the children are colouring in with 2 different colours different ways of making 8. So for example, 7 and 1 could be 7 red coloured in circles and 1 blue circle. And then further down you'll see that they can do what we call a switcher. So 7 and 1 can become 1 and 7, and then they change the colours. So after working on pictures, the children are ready to calculate mentally without any support or aids. They can just use their pencil on a piece of paper and come up with the answers for the story of 8. Up until now, I've just been speaking about number work and all the work that we do in our numeracy lessons. But there are other areas of maths which we cover throughout the year in primary 2. So some of these are listed in the slide. One of them is shape. So we've been looking already at 2D and 3D objects and their properties. So, looking at things like how many sides they have, how many corners they have, and things like that. And then we'll also be looking at measuring. So we'll be doing a lot of estimating and measuring with things like straws and cubes and paper clips before we actually get on to using maybe a meter stick or a measuring tape. And then we'll be looking at money. So we'll be looking at the different coins, probably within 50p. We'll be doing some information handling, and finally we'll end up with time looking at o'clock and half past the hour on a digital and an analogue clock.
During the course of Primary 2, the children will have some fantastic opportunities to learn through the following topics. We'll be starting with the stories of Percy and the Park Keeper, looking at the environment and some science. Throughout the course of the year, we'll be looking at the seasons and the weather, measuring and recording, and getting to know all of the different terms surrounding that. In the second term, we will look at the street, which is a fantastic topic, and the kids get a chance to look at everything around them in their local environment, how people can help us in the different shops, and all of that sort of thing. We'll also have a look at Christmas and how it's celebrated around the world in different religions. In the new year, we'll be looking at animals, looking at the different types of animals, their climates, how they behave, what they eat, all that sort of stuff. And we'll move on to look at time travel and a little bit of history for the kids, and them getting the chance to see how people lived in the past, even just as long ago as 20 years, 30 years, and we'll look right back. In the final term, we'll be looking at plants and living things, giving the children the opportunity to learn about life cycles and how plants grow. And finally, we'll be having a fantastic topic looking at fairyland, giving the kids a brilliant opportunity to upskill their imaginative writing. In other areas of the curriculum, the children will get the chance to do PE twice a week. At the moment it's outside. We're hoping that the restrictions will be lifted and we can get the chance to play some indoor team games and things like that again. We will be focusing on basic moves, ball skills, dance, gymnastics and fitness. Through our work in topics, the kids will do expressive arts and science, and the expressive arts is something we focus on in Primary 2, giving the kids great opportunities to design and create projects of their own. In the day-to-day running of the classroom, we'll be looking at the kids increasing their personal and social skills. We've been really impressed with them taking to the routines, making new friends and showing real resilience coming back into school after lockdown. We will continue this positive praise using our behaviour strategies. The children look to gain 30 pebbles in Primary 2 in order to gain a prize, and that is something that keeps them really motivated as the day goes on. We also have the special person, sometimes of the week, sometimes of the day. This is something the kids really look forward to being and something they really thrive on the chance of getting. In our writing, we have some special friends in Primary 2 called the Quiet Critters, and I'd be really interested to see if you ask your kids about them, what they tell you. We've had a fantastic first few weeks back at school, and we're going to be looking to get home learning up and running soon again. This year, the kids will be sent home a homework jotter for you to use to keep at home, but due to the restrictions in place at the moment, the jotters will not come back and forth. We would really appreciate if you check over your children's work for any mistakes, and if there's anything in particular you would like us to see, then post it on the learning journals. As far as home learning goes, we will be sending home reading books. They will be coming home on a Monday, and it's really important that we get them back by a Thursday so that we can quarantine them for 72 hours before they're used by a different class. We will be sending home sounds and spelling words and maths work. All of this will be posted on the learning journals in the coming weeks. Just for a few additional bits and pieces at the end, gym day will be on a Monday and a Wednesday. On gym days, the kids are welcome to come to school dressed in their gym clothes. We also ask the kids bring a small bag with a waterproof jacket, a snack, and a refilled water bottle every day. Most importantly, and I'm sure you heard it in P1, please make sure everything is named. As you know, the little ones don't always keep everything in the right place, and it's much easier for us to return things successfully if everything is named. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to our Meet the Teacher presentation. Mrs. Cottis, Mrs. Forsyth and myself would all like to thank each and every one of you for your ongoing support as we move forward with a fantastic year in Primary 2.